Yes, it's time once again for the Russell Brown Show. In this episode, which just happens to be called Healing Sand, I'm going to discuss some super user tips and techniques you need to know about using the healing brush. And beyond that, I'm going to show you a way to heal this sand using vanishing point. Let's start with the tips and techniques when using the healing brush in Photoshop. Of course, we want to start with this image and end up with something that looks like this. Now, this project is especially difficult. You may not think so, but it's much more complex than the average healing project because we have grains of sand that are in a particular slope and the sand is moving in a particular direction. Now, let's turn off this top layer and in fact, let's throw this layer away. I'm going to create a new layer here from the base of the layers palette by clicking this icon. Then I'm going to move up here to the options bar and be sure I select sample all layers. I'm doing this because I want to paint my healing into layer number 1 over here in the layers palette so that my results are separate from my original. It's a great way to work on a project like this. Now let's move over here to the tool palette and you can see I have my healing brush tool selected over here. Now this is where I want to make some alterations to the features found in the options bar to improve the quality of this brush. I'm going to bring the size of my image up to about 100% right about there. Then going up here to the options bar, the first thing I want to adjust is the shape of the brush. Here by clicking on this flyout arrow, I'm going to change the shape of the brush to become a very thin elliptical brush just right about that size. And I'm also going to change the direction of the brush here by clicking on this arrow at the top right here and rotating to the right. I'm going to change the angle till it matches the angle of the grain of the sand on the beach. You can see here just like this. And finally, I find I get my best results by adjusting the hardness value all the way up to 100%. Wow, 100% for this value. Not a soft edge, but a very hard edge for the best quality in this particular case with grains of sand it's necessary. You may adjust that at a different setting, for example, for someone's face. Okay, all I do is click away from that and then it's set. Of course, there's one more thing I need to do. The normal mode set here in the options bar will blend the edges that are being healed into the sand. But in this particular project, healing the edges will distort the shape of the sand, and in this case, and in other cases you may be working on, you may want to adjust this to replace. You may have never used this before, but replace will replace the exact pixels without the distortion of the blending at the edges. Watch this. I move into my work area. I hold down my Option or Alt key and sample the grains of sand in this area right there. You can see the angle is set for my brush. I then move down over the footprint here and I start to do a zigzag motion across the foot like this. A zigzag so that it blends into the surrounding grains of sand and it breaks up the edge as I paint this in. I can go back in again by holding my Option or Alt key down again, sampling in a different area and clicking and bringing in different textures over this area, thus hiding the distortion of the average brush. If I were to use a round brush, it does not give you the same effect and does not blend in as well. Okay, so now let's zoom back out and see our results. Looks great. So that is technique number 1. Changing the size of the brush, changing the angle, and I changed the hardness of the brush to 100%. Ah, you're now saying to yourself, Mr. Brown, can't I get similar quality results using the clone stamp tool? Yes, in fact, you can. And in many cases, I'll combine the healing brush with the clone stamp tool to get my best results. Okay, enough for the questions. Let's get moving. Now, there's yet one more technique. This one's wild, this one's crazy, it's zany. It could only be a Russell Brown Show special. I'm going to select layer number 1 and throw it away just like that. And let's create a new layer here from the layers palette that's blank and ready for our project. As I said earlier, the second technique is going to use vanishing point. Going up here to my filter menu and down to vanishing point now. Just like that. So here we are inside of vanishing point. The first thing I'm going to do is move over here and double click here on the create plane tool. If you didn't know this, now you do. If you double click, it creates a grid, a flat grid without perspective across your entire image. You can then click here, in this case, on the upper left-hand corner, and hold down the Shift key and drag this in to add a little bit of perspective to this. I'm going to grab this left side, and now I'm going to click again here on the right side with the Shift key and move in until my grid looks just right. Right about there. The shape and size of these squares is perfect, the way it slopes back along this sand. Okay, next I'm going to extend this grid a little bit here on the left so that it covers the entire area that I would like to heal. Just like that. Then I'm going to go over here and select the stamp tool right there. The stamp tool, similar to the healing brush tool inside of Photoshop, can be adjusted. The one thing I do want to adjust is the hardness. Remember, I said I get my best results by increasing the hardness. Let's go here, click, and I'm going to change the hardness to 100. Of course, changing this hardness and this value is going to depend upon the project. In this case, with sand and its granular quality, it's necessary to set it to 100% hardness because anything other than that will give you soft edges, and you can't have the sand looking soft. It's got to look hard and sharp. The next thing I want to adjust is to make sure that the healing is off. Right over here. I've set it to off. Now I cannot change the shape of the brush as I could inside of Photoshop, but in this case I just use a small brush and it works quite well. So now I move into my work area and hold down my Option or Alt key and click on the sand. Then I can move it. The first thing you'll notice, besides the fact that you're now healing in perspective, is that you see a preview, as you can see here, of the actual brush and the texture inside of the brush. Let me zoom in a bit so we can see this. I'm going to hold down my Command spacebar key on the Macintosh or my Control spacebar key on the PC and zoom in here just like this. And then my spacebar key alone will allow me to readjust this positioning. So now you can see I have a preview, so I can actually line things up if I wanted to. In this particular case, not quite as necessary in most cases, but now I just go across this area, covering in these areas like this. So that would be my first technique, to go in with a large brush in this case. Then I'm going to use the open and close brackets from my keyboard to change the size of my brush. In this case, with my open bracket to decrease the size of the brush. Just like that. Let's go a little bit farther. And now I can start to go in here, hold down my Option key or Alt key, and start to break up this edge that I created with the larger brush. Notice how I'm doing sort of a zigzag routine across the surface. And notice, because I have this set to no healing, similar to the replace mode, it then keeps the granularity, the quality, the sharp quality. I can go through and start to paint into this area and get rid of any patterning that might occur and hide these edges like this. Again, I'm quickly using the Option or Alt key and going back and forth from the top and the bottom and starting to blend this area in like this, so I get a more realistic quality to this healing, just like that. Now I can double click on the hand tool, zoom back out. So that looks great. So Vanishing Point is giving me two great features. It allows me to preview the pixels that are inside of my brush, as well as allowing me to paint in perspective. I now just click OK. It then renders that back here into Photoshop. If there were any areas that were not quite right, I could go back in with my healing brushes inside of Photoshop and use that elliptical shaped brush to repair them. You've just seen two great ways to solve this problem of healing the sand. Here inside of Photoshop with the healing brush, and inside of Vanishing Point using the stamp tool. Use these techniques the next time you come across a difficult project like healing sand.